Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Mritam Gamaya Aviravirmaedhi Rudrayate Dakshinam Mukham Tena Mam Pahi Nityam Tena Mam Pahi Nityam. Lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness unto light. Lead us from death to immortality. Reach us through and through ourself, O Lord, and protect us evermore from ignorance by thy sweet, compassionate face. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat. Om peace, peace, peace be unto us all. So Surinji, are you getting it? It's good? Okay. Okay. Those of you who have been watching, I'm sorry for the confusion. We have a new sound system. And G10, please turn yours off. It's very distracting, all the way off. So we're the new sound system, and we're trying to get everything working. And so we're hoping that it will go forward correctly from here. So this morning, the topic is in the series Basic Concepts and the Law of Karma. That is the series on basic concepts, and the topic today is the Law of Karma. So first, let me say that of all of the concepts of Hinduism, the one that is perhaps known best is the law of karma. That the law of karma is something that people are very familiar with, the basic concept, the law of karma, the law of retribution. And you find karma in many, many names nowadays. When I was in Madrid, I saw shops, gift shop that was called the Karma store, and the things sold on Amazon by Western sellers that are the karma meditation cushions, and karma is used everywhere. And so it's something that has become universally recognized, not universally believed, certainly, I'm not saying that, but that the law of karma is the most recognizable Hindu doctrine. And that's a good thing because it is becoming widely accepted as well. Not universally, nothing is universally accepted, even in Hinduism, nothing is universally accepted, but it is widely known. So the meaning of the term karma, it comes from the verbal root kri, K-R, or sometimes K-R-I, more properly, K-R with a dot under it. That is, it's a verbal R, kur in Sanskrit. And that is a verb meaning to do, a verbal root, because again, the structure of Sanskrit is different from English. And so it's not an infinitive, but it is what's called a verbal root. We don't have verbal roots in English. So it simply means to do. And karma is that which is done. So it gives an objective meaning. That which is done is karma. There are many words that come from kur, the verbal root meaning to do, like kara is one of the words for hand, because it's with the hand that we do so many things. So this is kara. And karana means an instrument of doing. Karta is a person who does, an agent of action. But karma is that which is done. It's not the instrument of action, it's not the agent of action, it's that which is done. Kriya is activity. Kriya, like Kriya Yoga, Kriya means activity, but karma means, again, that which is done. And so it has several meanings. The word karma has several meanings in Hinduism. One of the meanings is the Vedic rituals. They were called karma. And so, as you know, the karma kanda, that portion of the Vedas called karma kanda means that portion of the Vedas which was concerned with ritualistic action. Actually, the Samhita portion at the beginning is included in what's called karma kanda, though it was not uh, written as part of ritual action. They were written as hymns, as prayers. But later they became used in Vedic ritual. And so altogether, all of that was known as karma kanda. And the Jnana Kanda, the knowledge portion of the Veda, was the Upanishads. So karma can mean the Vedic rituals. So when Sri Ramakrishna says in the Gospel that karma yoga is very difficult in the modern age, he means the traditional meaning of karma yoga, where you perform Vedic rituals without any desire for the fruits. He didn't mean karma yoga either as Sri Krishna taught it or as Swami Vivekananda taught it. Because you find in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna itself, Sri Ramakrishna is often teaching. On almost every page, he's teaching something about karma yoga. But so his use was the traditional use. So karma sometimes means Vedic rituals. Sometimes in general, it just means work. The most generalized meaning for karma is work, action. And it also means, of course, it refers to the law of karma. So oftentimes when you say karma, you may mean Vedic rituals, you may mean action, you may mean karma yoga, or you may mean the law of karma. And sometimes karma also refers to the fruits of action, that which you get as a result of the law of karma functioning. So somebody says, well, it's just my karma. Now I have to suffer because it's my karma, meaning that something I did in my past, recent or ages ago, has caused the present experience of suffering to me. So it's just my karma. So the law of karma is that which governs the functioning of causation at the moral level. So that will become more understandable as we go forward. So today, it's karma as the law of karma that we're speaking about, of course. So karma is believed in across the dharmic traditions. Now, dharmic traditions, as I've explained recently in another talk, the talk on dharma itself last month. The dharmic traditions are those traditions which grew out of India. So that includes Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and Sikhism. Those four traditions are the traditions that form the Dharma traditions because all of them believe in Dharma, the principle of right action, and all of them also believe in karma. Their idea of karma differs from tradition to tradition, but all of them have some idea of karma. The Jainas have a very different idea of the way karma functions. They have a somewhat unusual idea. I won't go into that, it's rather complicated. Buddhists have differing opinions within themselves. In the Theravada tradition, they accept karma as much as the Hindus do, with some differences because they don't believe in a self, a permanent self, and so it's more difficult for them to explain how it is that karma goes with a person from life to life when there is no actual person there. But it's similar to the Hindu view. In Mahayana Buddhism, they believe that karma is transferable from person to person by an act of concentrated intention. That is, you find in Mahayana Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism especially, that when they do any action, they will, an intentional sacred action in particular, or a spiritual practice, or the performance of a ceremony, they will dedicate the fruits of their action to the welfare of all beings, believing that the karma that they have generated through their good action, it can be dedicated and handed over to the welfare of others, to a particular person or to all beings. And so they believe that karma is quite transferable. Now, in Hinduism, in a limited extent, that is believed also. That's why someone like Sri Ramakrishna, or a very great and powerful guru, not most gurus, but a very powerful guru or an incarnation like Sri Ramakrishna, can actually take on the karma of others and work it out within their own body. In fact, one of Sri Ramakrishna's disciples, Nag Mahashoy, a very great householder disciple, one of Sri Ramakrishna's greatest disciples, really, he came to Sri Ramakrishna in Sri Rama, not the first time, but he came during Sri Ramakrishna's last illness when Sri Ramakrishna was in Kashipur. And suddenly he realized that he could touch Sri Ramakrishna's feet and draw the disease, that is, the karma which was causing the disease, into his own body. Sri Ramakrishna, who knew the minds of everyone, saw what Nag Mahashoy wanted to do and forbade him from doing it. And Sri Ramakrishna himself said that, and Holy Mother confirmed, that he suffered from cancer of the throat because he had taken on the karma of others. And so in Hinduism, it's possible to transfer karma, but only by a very powerful spiritual giant. Only such a person can do it generally. Uh, the Jainas, the Buddhists, the Sikhs, like the Hindus, they all accept the law of karma. And as I said, the law of karma has become increasingly well known outside of India as well, and outside of the Buddhist countries, where, of course, it's very well known too. Ralph Waldo Emerson, our own transcendentalist philosopher of the 1800s, he said that he had understood the law of karma before he ever read any Eastern texts. Of course, as an adult, he read a number of Eastern texts, those that were available in his time, the Bhagavad Gita, the Laws of Manu, the Vishnu Purana, and whatever else was available in those early years. And then the first English translations were coming out from Sanskrit. But even before reading those, he conceived of the law of retribution. He understood somehow, whether it was past samskaras that were flowering or what, but somehow he understood that when you do an action, you get a cosmic recompense. Good action brings a good result, bad action brings a bad result. And so he wrote an essay called The Law of Retribution, which meant the law of karma, the law of retribution, that is, a law of return. That which you do, you get a return from it, which is commensurate with that which you have done. That's the law of karma. So the law of retribution, he said, was his later formula. After he wrote it, after he had already read Eastern works, Hindu works, but he said that the seed idea for it had come before he had ever come across Hinduism. And so through him, that idea spread also, the law of retribution. It's a very beautiful essay. And then in New Age thought. New Age thought began in Swamiji's time when he was in America. There were a variety of traditions of New Thought growing. And some of the famous New Age thinkers of that time were people who were directly and sometimes indirectly influenced by Swami Vivekananda. I have a friend in California who has done extensive research and discovered the links between Swami Vivekananda and the early founders of New Thought. And so a modern New Thought formulation of the law of karma, which is quite popular, which all of you have heard, is what goes around comes around. That is, what you put out, that comes back to you. And so that's a modern formulation in New Age terminology of the law of karma. What goes around comes around. And you find that in Christianity, there are echoes of the law of karma, though theologically it's not accepted as a principle, but you find that there's no reason that I can see why it could not be. It could be adapted to the needs of Christian theology, because St. Paul himself, in his letter to the Galatians, in the Bible, in the Christian Bible, in the New Testament, St. Paul says, As you sow, so shall you reap. That's a paraphrase, but that's a very close paraphrase to what he actually said. As you sow, so shall you reap. And so that itself, in those exact words, has become a saying coming down from St. Paul. That paraphrase has itself become a quotation: as you sow, so shall you reap. And so in Judaism, in Islam, and Christianity, there's no reason why some form of the law of karma could not be accepted, even though it's not a part of their canonical thinking. It actually could be made a part of canonical thinking in Christianity because it's actually in the Bible. And so, let me come to the basic meaning of the law of karma. So in this talk, I'll talk about the basic meaning, what's implied in the law of karma, the history of the concept, and then the implications of the concept, how it works, and then the implications of the concept. So karma really is a statement of Newton's third law of motion. Newton's third law of motion. I think Newton's first law of motion was the law of inertia, that a body which is at rest remains at rest until a force is exerted upon it to put it into motion. And I believe his second law of motion was that a body in movement will continue in movement unless there's some action to impede it or to change its direction. So the third law of motion was, for every action in nature, there is an equal and opposite reaction. So what's important to understand here in the phrasing of it, for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. And here action means force, any force that is at work. There is an equal and opposite reaction. If you're driving your car down the road, then the air is pushing back against you. So opposite means opposite in direction. So you're going forward, there's a force pushing back on you. You hit the wall with your hand, the wall resists. The force comes back to your hand. If it weren't for the third law of motion, if you hit a wall, there would be no damage to your hand. The damage comes because of the equal and opposite reaction. So karma applies this to the level of human action. That was not something Newton took into consideration. It wasn't part of his law. His law was about physical nature, the way that this physical universe works. But the law of karma says that that same principle, the Newtonian principle of motion, that works at the moral level as well. So when I do an action, any action, there is an equal and opposite reaction, meaning that whatever I put out into the world reflects back to me. But there's a big difference between the physical level and the moral level, because at the physical level, the result is immediate. And that's why scientists would not be automatically willing to accept the law of karma, because you have to be able to see the effects, and the effect has to be immediate. It has to be measurable, and it has to be immediate. But in the law of karma, we see that sometimes bad people seem to prosper. No, they may prosper temporarily as a result of past good karma, something good that they've done, but their karma will catch up to them. And so karma, sometimes there is a delay in karma. An interesting thing with karma is that the further along the spiritual path you go, the quicker you get the results of your present karma. And I think, this is not from the scriptures, but it's my own understanding, I think that is because as we go along the spiritual path, the web of personal karma that we have created from countless past lifetimes as well as this lifetime, it becomes purified. And when we are not on a spiritual path, then the web of karma is so thick and so complex that you do a new action, the karmic result sometimes has to wait its turn in line because there's so much karma coming down the pike. And but as you progress spiritually, you find that you do something and you see a quick result to it. You say do something wrong, and you find that the retribution comes quickly. That gives you great faith in the law of karma. You begin to see that no, this seems to be true because I did this and this happened. You begin to see the connections between your actions and the results. When our karma is a web of complex strands, and we can't see that because there's so much complexity to our karma, then it's more difficult to believe in the law of karma unless it just appeals to us on rational grounds. But to actually see it in operation, it's more difficult. Um, I'll just tell a story. I wasn't there to witness it, but I know the person that it pertains to, and I heard this from our swamis in Belur that when the new sannyasins, the candidates for sannyasa, when they take their vows of sannyasa, they become freshly minted swamis. Then they go out for 3 days to beg for their food. And so before they go out to beg for their food, they've just finished the sannyasa ceremony. They've become swamis, but before they go out to beg their first meal, they're given instructions on how to beg, what to do and what not to do. And so among the instructions, this one Swami, who is the acharya of the monks, he told them that, among other things, he told them that be careful of dogs. Because the dogs in the neighborhoods they can be dangerous, and so just don't bother them, don't mess with them, leave them alone, so that you don't get bitten. And so the monks went out, and one of the monks was bitten by a dog. I think it's the only time that's actually happened, or the only time I know of it's happened, but he was bitten by a dog. And the monk, when he came back and it was reported, and he had to have shots and everything, rabies shots, then the acharya, the Swami who is the teacher, instructing the monks, he scolded this new Swami very strongly. Said, what did you do? And the monk said, I didn't do anything. I just went up to the house and called out as I was told to do. And then the dog came out from nowhere and bit me. And no, no, you must have done something. And so the Acharya scolded him very strongly, even though the monk protested that he had done nothing. And so the next day, the Swami who had scolded the other one, he was the Acharya. This is the only time this ever happened. In Bellarmine, there are a number of dogs. They're wild dogs, but they're tame. They don't belong to anybody, but they just live there on the large grounds. The Swami was walking down the path as he normally did every day, and a dog was lying on the over to the side of the path. And as he passed the dog jumped up, came over, bit him on the leg, went back and laid down. And so that was an amazing thing that here the Swami had scolded the other Swami, thinking that he must have done something. And so then the universe taught him that no, you don't have to do anything. And I'll show you you don't have to do anything. And you have scolded that Swami, that young Swami unnecessarily. So that sort of thing sometimes happens. As we go along the path, we find that we do an action and the result comes quickly, and we can clearly see the connection between what we did and the result we got. Then we get faith in it. So again, the basic meaning is that for every action, at the moral level also, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Opposite means opposite in direction. What I give out comes back. What goes around comes around. Uh, so karma applies this law of Newton to the moral sphere. Of course, the law of karma came much earlier. We should say that Newton applied the law of karma to the realm of physical motion, because the law of karma came first. And so it says that for a good action, you get a good result. For bad action, you get a bad result. And as I already mentioned, St. Paul says in his letter to the Galatians, in chapter 6, verse 7, he says that as you sow, so shall you reap. slightly differently phrased, but the meaning is clear that as you sow, so shall you reap. And the words sow and reap are there. It's just, it's a little, because he was putting it in a context, the sentence is a little more complicated. So the law of retribution, and it's an extension of the law of causation. The law of causation says, which in Indian philosophy, not just Hindu, but in Indian philosophy, one of the central questions of Indian philosophy is the nature of causation. The Indian sages of all types, of all schools, were very interested in the nature of causation. And they developed the idea that everything in life has a cause, that everything that we see has a cause behind it, that everything is an effect, and the effect itself oftentimes becomes a further cause. And so everything is linked by this chain of causation. So whether a Buddhist or whether a Vedantin or a Mimamsaka, a Sankhya, Yoga, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Jaina, Sikh, whatever, all brands of Indian philosophy were interested in the nature of causation. And that is why they were interested in the process of karma. So that causation is not just taken in the scientific sense of physical causation. And of course, in modern science takes mental causation also, physical and mental causation. But in India, they realized that that works at the moral sphere also. Why? Why does it work at the moral sphere? Well, one reason, I'll come to another reason, supporting reason in a little bit, but one reason that is that there is a moral component to the universe. And so if I go against that moral component, it pushes back. If I do something in tune with it, I get a good result. If I do something against the moral component of the universe, I get a bad result. And so it assumes this moral component to the universe. So now let me come to the assumptions connected to the law of karma. The other ideas, they're basically four ideas which are tied to the law of karma. The law of karma works because it's in association with these four ideas. So one of them is, which I just mentioned a moment ago, that the idea of a dharma. Dharma says that the universe is constructed in a moral way, that there is a moral fabric to the universe. And so to be dharmic, to lead a dharmic life, that is a life of correct action, of good action, means that you are in tune with the nature of the universe. And to lead an immoral life means that you are out of tune with the nature of the universe. So that principle and the law of karma together, it takes reward and punishment out of the hands of God. It's not God which smites you for doing something which he doesn't like. It's in the nature of things. If you put your hand in a fire, you burn yourself and you realize, oh, fire is hot. I can't put my hand into it. I burnt myself. I have to learn not to put my hand in fire. And so that, of course, luckily we learn quite early in life as little, small children. And it's a lesson that lasts the rest of our lives. We know not to put our hands in fire. But if we do it by accident, we're cooking or something and we touch a hot plate or something by accident and burn ourselves, it hurts. But on top of the hurt, we don't blame God, or we don't think God has punished me. God burned me because he didn't like me putting my hand on the stove. God doesn't like me to put my hand on the hot stove, the burner, and so he burned me. No, that doesn't come into the picture. It shouldn't come into the picture. We think that heat burns flesh. I put my hand on something that was very, very hot. It's going to burn. God isn't in the picture doing it to me. It's all in the nature of things. And so in Hinduism, moral action is seen the same way. It's in the nature of things. It's not doing things against God. It's not offending God. It's not bringing down the judgment of God, not bringing down the castigation of God. It's all in the nature of things. And that's very important because it takes away that element of uh, deep embedded guilt, the sense that I'm a bad person and God is always punishing me for things that I do wrong. When I do something wrong, God doesn't like it, God is angry, and God punishes me. No, it takes that vindictiveness and that judgmental, punitive nature away from God. And it takes it out of the universe too. The universe is not punitive. It just reflects back what we put into the universe. One of my friends who used to live in Trabuco, he was not one of the monks, but he lived like a monk for many years there. He used to say that his father, who was Mexican American, his father used to say that in America there's a deep tendency of vindictiveness. And that is true. Even before he said that, I had noticed that in our own country. There's a deep thread of vindictiveness in the country's consciousness, which is why when you put people in prison, people want them to suffer. Even if somebody has reformed themselves, it's very difficult to get their crimes forbidden and to be released from punishment when they have shown that they have reformed themselves. Why? Because we want him to suffer. He caused harm to me or my family, and so he must suffer. So that vindictiveness is there. And so the law of karma takes it out of the realm of vindictiveness. It takes it out of the realm of a judgmental God who doesn't like certain things and likes certain other things, and he gets angry if we do things that he doesn't like, and puts it into the nature of things. That, if once we understand it, that's a great, great help in life. So dharma is one principle on which karma is founded. Another is the oneness of existence. It's because there's one reality that the universe reflects back to me that which I do. And it's because there's one reality that there is a law of dharma. As I said, dharma is built into the nature of the universe. But it's not as if it's saying it that way, that dharma is built into the nature of the universe, sounds as if somebody was God, we can assume, was constructing the universe and decided to sew a thread of morality into it. So there's the basic universe, and then you sew some moral fabric into it. No, the moral fabric of the universe is a reflection in the social sphere and the personal sphere, the psychological and social spheres of the unity of existence. And so if I hurt others, if I cheat others, if I lie, if I steal, then I am hurting myself. And so that's what makes the dharma and the law of karma both work. So dharma, the oneness of existence, rebirth, punarjanma, rebirth, is also tied to the law of karma because by the time most of us end our lives, we have never balanced our karmic worksheet. And so it's our past karma, this life and past lives that brings about our next incarnation. This life we're living now was brought about by past karma. And right now we're making more karma with all of our action, which will determine our future birth. So dharma, oneness of existence, and rebirth. And the fourth idea that's assumed for the law of karma to work is that there has to be some sort of cosmic memory. Because if I do an action now and the circumstances are not right for the visitation of the effects back on me until my next birth, where is that memory stored? So there has to be a cosmic mind, as in the Hindu tradition, or some mechanism for the memory of karmic results. In Hinduism, it's called adrishta, that is, that which is unseen. Because I do something now, and where the karma goes, I don't know. But then after some years, I get the results of it, or maybe in my next lifetime, I have to suffer the results of what I have done in this life. So those four ideas are inherently connected to the idea of karma, which and all of them work together. Let me briefly go over the history, and that I can very briefly do because it's not a complex history. It's not like the history of the development of Ganesha as we did last Sunday. In the Vedas, until the Upanishads, you don't find a clear statement of the law of karma. It's when you come to the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, one of the older Upanishads. It's a very ancient. Among the Upanishads, even the 10 main Upanishads. Some are older, some are later. And the Brihadaranyaka is one of the oldest of the Upanishads. There is where you get the first clear statement of the law of karma. So, for time's sake, I won't read the Sanskrit, though the Sanskrit is very nice. So, in one place in Brihadaranyaka, in the third chapter, it says, "One indeed becomes good through good work, and evil through evil work." So here, that's the whole statement. It's just simply that you become good through good work, you become evil through evil work. So that's part of the law of karma. It's not the whole thing, of course, but the effect of karma on character. A longer statement comes further in the text where it says, "As the self does and acts, so it becomes." That is, the effect of karma on character. By doing good, it becomes good, and by doing evil, it becomes evil. It becomes virtuous through good acts and evil through evil acts. So, again, the personal effect. Others, however, say the self is identified with desire alone. What the soul desires, it resolves to do. What it resolves to do, it works out. And what it works out, it attains. So the causative nature of action. That what you think about, that you resolve to do, what you resolve to do, you carry out. And when you carry out something, then you get the effect. Regarding this, it continues, there is this verse. Being attached, he, the actor, together with the work, attains that result to which his subtle body or mind is attached. So, talking about the person, the real person inside is attached to this body and to a subtle body. And so that we attain to that which the body or mind is, we attain the result to which our body and mind are attached. Exhausting the results of whatever he did in this life, so exhausting the results of karma, he returns from that world to this for work. So the previous statement said about attaining the results of our work refers to going to a heavenly world. We do good work here, we go to a heavenly world. But this last statement I read refers to coming when that results of that good work are exhausted, we come back from the heavenly world to this world. So the idea in Hinduism is that yes, there are heavenly worlds and there are hellish worlds also, but they are temporary. According to our karma, some people, after they die, they come quickly back into incarnation here. But most people go to either a heavenly world of reward for their good action or a world of suffering for their bad action, if that was predominant in them. But when that reward or punishment is over, we have to come back here. So that's part of the law of karma. Uh, Thus does the man who desires transmigrate. So if we have desires, we are born again. But the man who does not desire never transmigrates. So the goal of the law of karma is not to come back, or the law of rebirth, is not to come back again and again and have a good time. The law is to learn enough so that we don't need it anymore. The process of karma and the process of rebirth come to an end. Of him who is without desires, who is free from desires, the object of whose desires have been attained, and to whom all objects of desire are but the self, that is, everything has become the self. The vital forces do not depart. That is, when they die, they don't go anywhere. Being but Brahman, he is merged in Brahman. So Brahmaiva san Brahmapyeti. Being Brahman alone, he attains to Brahman. It doesn't go anywhere. But here itself, one realizes their infinite nature. So that is a clear statement of the basic ideas of karma. And in the Mahabharata, there it was much more developed. So you begin the beginning of the law of karma, you see clearly in the Upanishads. The intimations of it in the early part of the Vedas, a clear statement in the Upanishad, and then in the Mahabharata, it's fully developed. There's a statement there, as one sows, so one reaps. And this was before St. Paul. So I don't know that St. Paul read the Mahabharata, probably not, but it is the same statement. As one sows, so one reaps. No one inherits the good or bad deeds of another. The fruit is of the same quality as the action. So that whole thing was from the Mahabharata. So now let me briefly go over how karma works. When we do any action, an action which has some, at least a little bit of moral component, just walking across the floor, not thinking about anything in particular for no particular purpose, that's not a karmically significant action. But an action that has some sort of moral component, it's either a good action or a bad action, not a neutral action, then uh, uh, well, no, let me first say, because this is important, before I come to the actual working of karma, let me first say that it's often thought that karma is the law of reward and punishment. You do good things, you get good results. You do bad things, you get bad results. So do good things so you get good results. No, the law of karma is much more about learning than it is about reward and punishment. The component of reward and punishment certainly is there, but even the value of reward and punishment is not the reward or the punishment. It's the learning that we get through both. That's the important part, that karma is for the education of the soul. So it's about learning, and it's also about balance. That is, I do something bad. There has to be some balancing of the bad action that I have done, and that comes back to me. So my karma is balanced by experiencing the fruits of my action. I do something good comes back to me, and so it balances it out. Instead of thinking of it as reward and punishment, think of it as balancing out. Just as if I get angry and I hit the wall, it's going to hurt my hand. That's because I hit the wall. It's balancing out the action. But more important is, after I hit the wall, I learn I shouldn't get so angry. That's only destructive. Now I've got a hole in the drywall that I have to repair or pay someone to repair. And in the meantime, my whole family knows how foolish I was to get so angry that I hit a hole into the wall. Plus, my hand itself is badly hurt. And so I learn, not hopefully, we don't always learn, but we should learn not to do that. So karma is more about learning. So now, how does it work? There are two fruits in general, basically two fruits when we do any action. One is the samskara, that is the impression it makes on us. I do something, it leaves a memory. The other is it brings a fruit. That is, I do something good, there will be some balancing from the universe, now or later, that something good comes to me. I do something evil, I do something mean, I do something bad, something is going to come back to balance that. And so these are the two fruits. One is called the samskara, the other is called the phala, but you don't need to know the Sanskrit words. The samskara means the mental impression, the memory that comes from having done it. But I'll explain that a little more in just a moment. The other is the result of the action which comes back to me. Because I did this, this is going to come back to me. This other is going to come back to me. So the samskara has two parts to it. When I do something and it forms a memory, there are two parts. One is just the sensory memory. Uh, I I went to the office and I got very upset with people and I yelled at them. And so I have the memory of the office, what it looked like, who was there in the office, the sound of my voice and all of that. That's neutral. There's no problem in the memory. The memory is no problem at all. But tied to that is the anger I felt in the midst of that experience. And so in a memory, there are these two elements. There's the sensory memory, which is no problem at all, but then the emotional memory, the emotional impact. And those two form a complex in the mind where they're tied together. So when I remember going to the office, I remember how angry I was, and the anger comes back. If I could just remember the scene, like I'm watching a movie that I'm not involved in, it would have no effect on me. And that's what happens to a realized soul or someone who has gone high in the spiritual life. The emotional content of their memories is dissociated or destroyed. And so they have the sensory memory, but not the emotional content that was tied to it. So as Sri Ramakrishna, he could remember all of his childhood memories. He could remember, he knew who his parents were. He could tell you what village he was born in. He could tell you the name of his father and mother. His memories were not destroyed by his realization. But what was destroyed was the reactions to those memories. So that the good and bad reactions to the memories, he was free from that. And so he was not impelled to further action by memories. If a memory came up, he didn't think, oh, that was wonderful. I think I'll do that again. It was so much fun. I want to go do it again. Or a bad memory comes up and he, oh, that was terrible. And he starts feeling miserable and gets embarrassed and starts sulking and so forth. No, that emotional content was gone. What does that mean for us? It means that when memories come up, we have to learn by effort. It takes work and years of effort, but we can do it. We have to learn to dissociate the emotional content from our memories. So when we remember something that is painful or something that embarrasses us, something we did that's very embarrassing or something we feel guilty about, we have to do this very carefully with a mature mind. We have to learn to be able to remember in full detail what happened and diffuse the emotional content. Just let it go, let it go, let it go. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. That's past. That's past. Don't hold on to the emotional content of those experiences from the past. Let them go. It's that which causes our problem, the emotional content, the connection between the emotion and the memory. The memory is neutral, it does no harm. There's a story about one of the great French artists at the beginning of the late 19th or early 20th century. I forget whether it was Matisse or who. But a man came to his studio, and he saw on the walls of his studio, he saw paintings of nude women, but they were paintings. And so the man was who had come to visit the artist was a moralist. And so they chatted a little bit, and then he turned to the painter, the moralist, and said, "Why do you have these paintings of naked women on your wall? This is a bad example to the young people of our society." And went on scolding him. And the artist, again, I think it's Matisse, but it might have been someone else, sat there quietly and listened. And when the man wound down his harangue, the artist said, "But sir, those are only paintings." And so in that, there's a wonderful lesson that to the artist, a painting of a nude is just a painting. It's art. To the ordinary person, the painting of a nude is a nude. It's quite different, quite different. So, understanding that, we need to diffuse again the emotional and desire based content of our memories because the memories are not the problem. It's the emotional content, the emotional and desire based reaction to the content. So, these are the two results of any action, the impression on us and the fruit. Now, the impression is important also, not partly because of what I just explained, and learning to dissociate the emotional content from the memory. And even our worst memories, we can learn to look at them without getting disturbed by them. And that's a great help. It frees us a great deal if we can learn to do that. We have to do it carefully, but we can do it. But there's another thing involved here, and that is that when we do an action, it makes us samskara, an impression. If we repeat that, it makes a stronger impression. If we repeat it again and again and again, then we begin to form a very strong impression. The more we repeat the same action, the stronger the impression gets, and then the more it begins to drive our further character. And so we sow the thought, so this is a famous saying, sow a thought, we reap an action. We sow an action, we reap a habit. So a habit just means confirmed samskaras, strengthened samskaras. We sow a habit, we reap a character. So our character, that which we are, that which speaks of the quality of our being, that is the sum total of our habits. And so we have to be very careful of our actions. because who we are is nothing but the result of our past actions. We are the sum total of the effects of our past actions. So now I realize time is just about up, but I'm going to go a little over today because we started late because of problems in getting everything. This is our first time with the new system, so we had trouble getting going. And even once we were going, we weren't sure we were going. So it took time. So let me just mention briefly alternative theories. What are the competing theories against the law of karma? One, of course, is modern science, the philosophy of modern science. Modern science agrees that everything is causal, but they don't go into moral causation. They believe in psychological causation, yes, and physical causation, but they don't go beyond that to moral causation. And so modern science sees that, and they don't accept a unity, underlying unity to the universe. So the very thing that makes dharma and karma work, modern science doesn't accept at this point. It's not impossible that science could come to that conclusion, but right now science doesn't accept an underlying transcendental unity out of which this universe has come. And so, according to modern science, life is random. Evolution is random. It's just by random combinations of matter that suddenly life appears. Why? Not because there was a plan, not because there was a purpose, not because there was something was trying to get done, because trying to do something implies purpose, but just random physical processes. It just so happened that processes as chemicals come together in the right combination through random processes, and suddenly you get the beginnings of life. And then life begins to complexify just through random processes, and you get more and more complex life until at some point you get self-consciousness in at least human beings and some of the higher lower animals. But it's all a random process. There's no purpose involved. There's not trying to attain any end. Now, scientists become unscientific when they start talking about evolution. They become quite unscientific because they start talking about the purposes of evolution. Evolution is trying this, and evolution is aiming to do that, and evolution is benefited by such and such. So they begin to talk of evolution as if it's a person, a living thing that has purpose and has motivation and is trying to accomplish something. Oh no, that's contrary to the very foundation of their beginning idea that everything is random. Um, but that is one of several contradictions. So I'm not against evolution. I'm just saying that the way scientists find themselves speaking of it, or they don't find themselves, the way we find scientists speaking of evolution, then they betray their idea that everything is purposeless and random because they begin to see purpose in evolution. So that's the scientific view. And things happen. Why? Why did something bad happen to me? It's just random. There's no possible explanation except for just you were in the wrong place at the wrong time. But there's nothing higher being served by your experiences. If you're happy, be glad that you're happy, but there's no reason for it. If you're unhappy, too bad. But that's just the way things are. It's just a random process. Sometimes you're happy, sometimes sad, sometimes good things happen, sometimes bad things happen. And that's just the way it is. There's no purpose being served. So you're getting nothing out of your good and bad experiences in an ultimate sense. Yes, you may learn things along the way that's good enough for this life, but once you're dead, it's all over, it's gone. So another view is, and the other main view is in the religious view, is that everything happens according to God's will. And they're hybrid views that we could talk about, but the time is not there for all of that. So let me just say that the other main view is that everything happens according to God's will. And so why was I born of wealthy parents and somebody else was born in a slum? Well, it's God's will. We can't explain God's will. God knows why God does things. But if God is all good, why does God put some people in advantageous circumstances and other people in bad circumstances? We can't know. It's God's will. God alone knows why God does what he does. But we can't know that. It's just God's will. We just have to accept it and know that somehow God's justice prevails, even though we don't see it anywhere, but somehow it prevails. And in the end, if we believe, or the Christian view is, if we believe in Jesus, then when we die, we'll go to heaven. And then all of the things that we suffered from in this life will be freed from, and then we'll find that because I believed in Jesus, everything has become heavenly and everything has become wonderful. That, of course, is a crude simplification. Most good Christians don't believe it in such crude forms, but reducing it to just a bare outline, that is the idea. Everything happens according to God's will. We can't know God's will, and so you just have to assume that God knows what he's doing because God is God. Um, so that and that all will be made well afterwards. If you are a bad person, sometimes you see people born in bad circumstances who become good people. Sometimes people born in good circumstances become bad people. And so depending on where you're born, if you become good you and believe in Jesus, you go to heaven. If you become bad and don't believe in Jesus, you go to hell. And somehow there's justice in all of that. Now, that I don't find any justice in that, with all due respect to people who believe that, but it's not at all satisfying to me. The law of karma, however, explains our experience. So now I'll conclude by saying what are the effects, and I'll just list these very briefly because we're well over time now. What are the effects of accepting the law of karma? First of all, it explains life. It explains why I experience the things that I experience. Now, I cannot use, and I should not use, the law of karma to explain other people's experience because I'm not seeing the universe from their side. So, people who say that, well, things like the Cambodians suffered under Khmer Rouge because it was their karma, or the Jews suffered under Hitler, and the Gypsies and others suffered under Hitler because it was their karma. No, I have no right to say that because I'm not in their shoes. But I can see from my own experience that it explains my experience. And so I can extrapolate that it must explain other people's experience, but I have to leave that for them. I shouldn't project my explanation onto them because that sounds cruel and false. To sit here smugly and say, yes, all those people died because it was their karma. Well, no, that's unjust itself. And so see karma from the inside. See your own experience and see how it works. And those who are close to you, you'll see. And that will give you faith that, yes, somehow karma is working everywhere, but I don't know how it's working. And so I am not here to tell other people that, don't worry, it's all just karma. No, that is cruel. It's not cruel to understand it from the inside. So it explains life, and it therefore allows me to accept life as life comes to me. When experiences come to me, it allows me to accept the things as they come to me, to accept everything that comes, good and bad. If something bad comes to me, let me accept it. Let me accept it. First of all, I have to. I can try to run from it, but we'll find that circumstances run faster than you do. so, so I have to accept life circumstances. So let me turn towards life, facing life, and accept the circumstances, and realize that everything that comes to me is meant for me. Every experience that comes into my life is meant for me. There's something for me to learn from it, and to learn to face circumstances with the question, what can I do with these circumstances? Let me face life creatively. What can I do with these circumstances? And so this brings the ability to face life and the ability to face life with patience and with wisdom, trying to learn from it. The law, accepting the law of karma, empowers the present, because if my present circumstances were made by the past, then I'm making my future right now. So let me, and I'm doing that partly by the way that I react to the circumstances that come to me. So by learning to respond to circumstances that come to me, I learn how to act appropriately and how to learn from everything. If my present destiny was created by me, then I can create my future destiny right now. Uh, Another thing that it does for me is I don't need to punish others. Yes, if society punishes others, that's okay. But I don't. If somebody does something wrong, yes, I shouldn't allow people to abuse me. I try to stop the abuse, whatever. That is given. But sometimes somebody does something wrong to you, and you can't get. There's not a means for getting back at them easily, and so then you start trying to dream up ways that you can punish them. No, I don't need to do that, because karma takes care of that. So again, if it's a question of abuse, immediate abuse, you put a stop to it. Don't allow people to abuse you. Don't allow people to take advantage of you. But circumstances which are a little more complicated, where you can't. It's not just a question of stopping something. Somebody does something and gets away with it, and then you start dreaming up ways that I can make them suffer. No, that's just involving yourself in bad karma. Know that you don't have to make them suffer, because the law of karma takes care of that. They're going to suffer for anything bad that they did. Don't involve yourself in the further karma by doing that. I don't need to punish others. Then we learn that we begin to learn that life can be approached creatively. So with that, I'll end on the note that the law of karma is seen to be a universal law, that just like the laws of physics. And one of the basic things implied in it is that the universe gives me whatever I need, because the universe is a reflection of my own past actions. And my needs, the things that I actually need, are things which my past actions have brought me to. My needs are a function of who I am. And if my experience is also a function of who I am, then the universe will give me that which I really need. And so I can begin to learn contentment. So, with that, I will end the talk on the law of karma. And I'll give announcements. And if in the meantime anyone has a question, I'll answer one or two questions briefly, because we're already over time, and then we'll close. So, for announcements, nothing special. Tuesday we'll have the Bhagavad Gita class at 7:30 in the evening. On Thursday we'll have the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna class at 11 o'clock in the morning, both live streamed. And next Sunday, in the series on Vedantic texts, I will take the hymn of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the great, great saint, considered an incarnation of God, who wrote the Shikshashtakam, the 8 lessons of instruction, a very beautiful devotional hymn. As I said some time ago, I wanted to find some devotional texts as well. So it's not all just texts on high Advaita, on the path of knowledge, but some devotional texts as well. So that will be next Sunday. So any questions, Surenji? Surenji? Yes, Surenji has one. The question is that if our desires determine the desires and experiences of this life determine our next life, how does the Jivatman decide which body to go to? Uh, I'm sure that Surin is not thinking this, but there is an idea that's prevalent that let me negate now. That is, many people nowadays say that before we're born, we choose our next birth, as if we're sitting and we have a grocery store selection of cereal boxes. I like shredded wheat. No, I don't like shredded wheat. I like something with raisins in it. Let me get raisin bran. No, I like cornflakes. And no, it's not like that, that you see a whole bunch of potential parents. I'm going to go there. No, it's like attracted to like. It's because of the extremely complex nature of this universe that you find yourself. You don't sit somewhere and decide, oh, I'm going to be born there. Your karma draws you into the circumstances that you need. And so it's an unconscious process. Only for illumined souls, if they decide to come back, they have more conscious decision power to determine the place and time of their birth. And that, of course, is part of the belief of the Tibetan Buddhists with the reincarnated lamas like the Dalai Lama. But for most of us, it's just a question of My karma has suited me for a certain type of birth, and the parents which are best suited to give me that type of birth, they find me as their child. So they don't choose me consciously, and I don't choose them consciously. My karma chooses their nature. So here, diffuse the emotional content from memory. Oh, that's a suggestion. Okay, how to deal with or obtain relief from negative samskaras, including those caused by others, is one of the more challenging aspects of life. Uh, so yes, the aforementioned practices helpful. I'll explain all of this in a moment. So okay, so this was basically not a question, but saying that it was helpful to know how to separate the emotional content of a memory from the sensory content of the memory. What a scene looked like, what it sounded like, if there's smell and taste involved, tactile sense, whatever sensory memory is involved. That's one thing, and then there's the emotional content. That's the way which she was saying here, that's the way that we overcome bad memories. And let me say one other thing about this, because this is important, because it's very sensitive. I mean, the process is sensitive. That this is basically what psychotherapy does. It takes you back to an experience, oftentimes a childhood experience, a traumatic experience, which cause certain problematic experiences and behavior for you. It takes you back to that so that you can relive it with a mature mind and release the emotional power of that experience. So that's what we can do through a auto directed process, self-directed process. Take myself back to my memories, relive them, and realize with my mature mind that I don't need to hold on to this. I don't need to hold on to this. So that's a big subject. I'll leave it there. It'll go. You'll get another lecture now. So last, Jayanta, how the path of devotion fits with the law of karma. Yes, that's a very good question and also a very big topic. I had intended to deal with that also, but there wasn't time. Let me just say that you can take, as some do, take the law of karma as an inviolable law, that everything is determined by karma and nothing interferes with it. Once you've made karma, you have to receive the full result. That's the law of karma in itself. But for a devotee, there's another factor, and that is the grace of God. The grace of God is there. And God is free. God is outside, by definition, absolutely free, outside of the law of causation, outside of the law of karma. And so, through the grace of God, the bondages of karma can be destroyed. So, that a person with a devotion, if their karma was that they should lose an arm, then they have to get something. Then maybe they get a small cut, but they don't lose their arm. They get a small cut rather than losing the arm. And there are examples of that I all cut rather than losing the arm. And there are examples of that I could give, but there's not time for that. That through the grace of God, karma can be greatly reduced and eventually karma can be destroyed. Swami Brahmananda used to say that the obstacles in your path may seem mountain high, but they're actually a mountain of cotton. And so it still seems impassable, but just one match of God's grace and the whole mountain disappears in a moment, disappears into harmless ash in a moment. And so the grace of God is there. The grace of God is real. And so face karma as it comes to you, but also pray for the grace of God. And know that as you come closer to and easing your path through the veil of karma. So with that, I will stop and give a closing chant. Om Dyo Shanti Antariksham Shanti Prithvi Shanti Apa Shanti Oshadaya Shanti Vanaspataya Shanti Vishwe Deva Shanti Brahma Shanti Sarvam Shanti Shantireva Shanti Sama Shantiredhi Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace is in the heavens. Peace is in the sky. Peace is on earth. Peace in the waters. Peace in the plants and the trees. The gods are peace. Peace is the nature of truth. All is peace. Peace alone, peace. May that peace, real peace, be with us all. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all the beings of the universe.